Hello, Doctor Who fans, and welcome to a Who Universe review here. And my gosh, what just happened? Moments are starting to sink in. I think a lot of people are just like either shocked or surprised. But some were probably surprised, some were shocked the way how it was done. But man, this may have topped one of Russell T Davis's previous season finales that he's done. I mean, he's done few already. He's done the reveal of the Master. He's done the reveal of the whole Bad Wolf and the Dalek plot in season one, the reveal of the Cybermen returning, and with the Cybermen versus Daleks battle, and then we had the whole Davros return in season four, and then of course the whole Time Lords return in the end of time. Yeah, this may have topped all of those previous returns at this point. It might have topped it. So let's discuss about the Legend of Ruby Sunday, shall we? So where do we begin? We pretty much begin with the TARDIS crash landing in the unit HQ, obviously with the Doctor reuniting with Rose Noble. They do talk a little bit about Donna and the 14th Doctor, but yeah, they kept it very vague, so they didn't really mention them that much. So I think it was pretty apparent that yeah, we weren't going to see David Tennant or Catherine Tate in this story, in this two-parter anyway, because otherwise we would have known about it because there would have been rumors about their involvement in the finale, but no. But either way, at some point, we're bound to probably see a return for the 14th, probably, because, yeah, we're bound to catch up with the 14th. They're bound to reunite the 14th and 15th, considering the 14th has been doing stuff in secret since he is pretty much retired. Or he kind of makes it sound like he's retired, even though I don't really think he is, but we'll find that out sometime down the road. Either way, we come to obviously, we also come to the fact that the Doctor mentions about the Susan Twist situation. Obviously, they lead him directly to Susan Triad with Triad technology, and he realizes that the anagram of that is TARDIS technology. So the Doctor was suspicious about the name of TARDIS technology, even though that anagram is something we thought about. It's not necessary. It does sort of tie in, but not. Yeah, there is a little bit of tie-ins to it, but not necessarily the main thing leads up to whatever, yeah, to what we see in the reveal. So, yeah, so the whole point of TARDIS technology, and of course, from that point, the name Susan, because obviously Ruby mentions about the time when the Doctor mentions about Susan being the Doctor's granddaughter. So he kind of suspicious. Could it be her? Could it not be her? Because of the fact that Time Lords regenerate, but yet, obviously, upon the Doctor seeing Susan Triad, she doesn't recognize him, which is very interesting. She doesn't recognize him at first until the Doctor brings up her being the ambulance, her as Pippi's mum, and some of the recent points where the Doctor has met Susan Triad. She begins to remember those nightmares or those dreams that she's had, which is very interesting. She talks about some of the dreams she's had of basically appearing in different adventures where she encounters the Doctor and Ruby, which is very interesting. And we'll come back to that in a moment. So obviously, alongside that, he brings up Ruby Sunday. Ruby is just like obviously considered famous according to UNIT because apparently her being found on Christmas Eve was hitting the headlines in 2004. Christmas Eve 2004 was when her birthplace took place, which is very interesting. It's interesting it's 2004 because if you remember correctly, Christmas 2004 was when Russell T Davies first teased the return of Doctor Who, his first revival of Doctor Who. You may remember, I'm pretty sure most of people will probably figure that out, but yeah, that was when initially the first teaser for the revival of Doctor Who, which led to the return of Doctor Who with Christopher Eccleston and Billie Piper taking the lead, which is funny how it ties back into that first promotion of Russell when he first took over Doctor Who back in 2004, leading into the premiere of the series in 2005, which is very interesting that they're tying into that a little bit. I wonder if there's an Easter egg to that potentially within this season, maybe. But nevertheless, they obviously try to get the videotape because obviously Ruby tries to get the videotape because she wanted to figure out Obviously, Clara Sunday, being her foster mom, decides to her stepmom, as you look at it, basically decides, yeah, I want to come with you, Ruby. I want to try and help and figure out this mess. But yeah, they hire Mrs. Flood to come in to look after Ruby Sunday's Clara Sunday's mother, who's basically in bed. She's been obviously ill. We knew this from the Church of Ruby Road. But what was really interesting is, you may remember back in the Christmas special when Mrs. Flood looked at us and said, "Have you not seen the TARDIS before?" And then now this time she's more evil this time. The way she sort of says to the camera, "Oh, you might not want to trust the Sundays," and then the mother's like, "Why is that?" Because, well, a storm is approaching, and he is brewing. Like, looking at us right in the camera when saying these words really makes you wonder: is Mrs. Flood evil? Is she potentially related to the enemy? I'm curious to hear what everyone thinks about this, because it's really interesting. Because in the previous times we've seen Mrs. Flood, she's been all nice and very friendly to us, but yet now she's very sinister. Like, she knew this was coming. She's pretty much possessed, like you'll see with one of the other unit soldiers. So I'm wondering, is she evil, or is she a fortune teller of some kind? Maybe. I'm just curious about who we reckon Mrs. Flood really is, because it's becoming more and more suspicious. Her behavior is becoming more and more suspicious as time goes on. I wonder if we'll learn more about her next week, potentially. I'm just curious about that. Now we come on to the obviously the tape, the time window. The Doctor uses the time window to find out the church on Ruby Road, that whole church in Ruby Road situation. We see Ruby's mother walking away. The Doctor comes out. Ruby's mother points at the Doctor. The Doctor doesn't know why, but then interestingly, obviously the soldier keeps looking to see what that is, and then all of a sudden, Morrison brings up this weird black smoke that appears where the TARDIS once stood, is where this smoke comes in, which is very interesting. And also, we hear this sort of voice coming out, or as him using using him as the disguise of the voice. And all of a sudden, when the time window shuts down, he's turned into stone. Like, he's literally just turned into stone, pretty much. Like, he's been killed by stone possession, which is very. Even the Doctor was like very surprised by the way he died. He basically died by like a sand or storm, that a sort of sandstorm basically killed him. Very bizarre. And obviously, it was at this point he decided he wanted to go and see Susan Tryon to find out whether or not it's his granddaughter. Obviously, he's very suspicious about her, considering he's encountered that face before in different scenarios. And and even when the Doctor brings that up, she looked very scared and worried. And like, yeah, I gotta go, like really terrified about those dreams that she had. And then from that point on, obviously UNIT were investigating the tape from that black smoke, and what they found was very sinister. You may notice throughout the course of the series, the TARDIS has been making this weird sound effect, and the Doctor was very suspicious of it at first. And Devil's Core is like, "Oh, what's that? The TARDIS never does that." And he kind of brushed it off like, "Oh, it's nothing. It's probably just indigestion, or probably because she hates, but because it hates time bounty hunters and stuff during Roger." Turns out that was actually more that it turns out that the TARDIS was possessed by something. This life form grabbed hold of the TARDIS during Ruby Road and was able to latch on into the TARDIS and basically possess the TARDIS this entire time. And it was from that moment, obviously, Caitlin Stewart decides to get people out of the building because she knew what was coming, like something bad's going to come out of this. And she tries to get everyone out of board except for Harrison and obviously Ruby Sunday. But what came after this was just pure brilliance. The fact that, well, we hear that voice coming again. Harriet has been possessed, reading some dialogue, and we find out that her name is, in fact, Harbinger. Yeah, she was back. So this woman, Harriet, was actually a disguise to somebody known as Harbinger. And then you find out that she was, in fact, possessed because she was actually reading some dialogue that was bringing back the enemy. And don't worry, we'll get to the reveal part here. Obviously, from that moment, Susan Tryon gets lost and confused to say, "Who is he?" referring to the Doctor. and then you'll notice that the dialogue that she was meant to be reading changes completely to saying, "I'm needed, I'm lost, I am, sort of, I'm possessed, I'm stuff like that," and then eventually changes into, "I am returning." Like it starts to really pick up when you see the words "I am returning," and then from that moment we start to you see the smoke coming out of the TARDIS. Yeah, they got very suspicious whatever was coming because Kate Stewart was like, I know something. This ain't good. And she was very, very like quick on like, okay, get ready, guys. Something bad's coming. And from that point, we finally see Susan Triant get possessed. Then obviously her Susan Triant's secretary gets turned into stone. And then upon looking at the screen, the Doctor realizes it's not. They looked at the wrong aerogram. It's not the TARDIS aerogram we were meant to be looking at. It was meant to be the name Sutekh. Sutekh the Destroyer has officially returned to Doctor Who in this story. And right there and then, the Doctor was like, this ain't good. You could tell by the Doctor's face. He was stunned when he realized that it was Sutekh. Because trust me, the Doctor hasn't faced Sutekh since the Tom Baker days, when Tom Baker was the face of the Doctor, of course. Pyramids of Mars. Definitely recommend people go and check that story out if you really want to really get into the lore aspects of Sutekh. Trust me, there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens in Pyramids of Mars. And in fact, that story, some elements had been brought into this season, like the deserted London. We saw that was that was inspired from one of the scenes in the Pyramids of Mars when Sarah Jane Smith and the 14th saw a devastated town. So that was taken right out of the page, Pyramids of Mars. So this series has been taking elements from Pyramids of Mars, and obviously Sutekh was essentially a part of that plan the entire time. And obviously what we see is this very Egyptian-like sort of hound or dog, sort of looks very possessed and very like got Egyptian-like stuff all over its head, and you can and it obviously it's CGI, but it's really like telling how it's sitting on top of the TARDIS and it's using the humans to speak for it, and obviously Huron Bridger speaking for it, and then obviously Susan Triant now in the body of Sutekh, now confronting the Doctor, and the Doctor is basically afraid. He knows he hasn't faced Sutekh in a very long time, and it's very, very sinister now, and it comes to the to be continued moment as Sutekh might be about to destroy the Doctor, or does it? We'll suppose we'll find out next week. But what a way to reveal Sutekh! The whole aspect of Sutekh coming back. Yeah, the theories were right. We kind of figured Sutekh was coming back, and I think a lot of people suspected Sutekh was going to get involved in this in some way because of the way the TARDIS was making these random noises throughout the season, and the whole deserted London flashback, reminiscent to what we saw in Pyramids of Mars, and just some of the elements we've been seeing are basically taken from that story. And you know full well that Russell's been using that story guide to this story. And also, we still yet to know about the title sequence part, that whole purple stuff on the bottom of the TARDIS. We don't know what that is yet. I'm sure we'll probably get answers to that maybe in next week's story, because Russell did say pay attention to the title sequence, that whole purple smoke that comes out of the TARDIS in the title sequence, that we don't know what that is because we haven't been told what it is yet. So I'm sure we'll get some ideas of what that's about in Empire of Death, potentially. Yeah, I wonder if we're going to find out who Mrs. Flood really is next week. Is she a member of Sutekh, or is she a savior potentially? Or come to think about it, what if Susan Foreman is Mrs. Flood? What do you think about that as a twist? What if that ends up being the twist here? There's always a twist in the end, right? What if Mrs. Flood happens to be the Susan Foreman the Doctor doesn't recognize yet? That might make sense now, because thinking about Mrs. Flood, she hasn't changed yet. She hasn't got like this possessed stuff on her face. So I wonder if this is maybe her potentially, or maybe it's someone else. Maybe there's another returning enemy who's involved in this story. I don't know. What do you reckon? Could we see another returning enemy potentially revealed next week? and it could be who Mrs. Flood is. What do you reckon? Do you reckon this is Mrs. Flood is another enemy from the past, or do you reckon it's an ally? Be very interested to see people's theories about Mrs. Flood here. Curious to see where they take her character next week, considering she looked at us at the camera and told us the storm was coming, and we saw a storm developing outside of the real world, so we know that storm's going to hit London eventually in the story, so we know that's coming potentially next week. We know that thing is going to happen. It's just a question now of where do we go from here? Because I mean, we didn't see a trailer in the next time trailer for this thing. We just saw to be continued. So I would imagine BBC One might have a trailer out later. Maybe I mean, we just gonna have to hope and pray that something's gonna come out. I don't know, but it's really hard to tell if we are gonna get one because they might just keep it entirely secret for a whole week and then we won't know until next week. You never know. It's really interesting to see how they're going to promote next week's story because they're going to have to promote it in some way. It's just how do you promote something without them knowing they've seen the Sutex if they haven't seen what's happened in this week's story? I mean, it's going to be very interesting. So, nevertheless, I'm very intrigued to see what happens here with Sutek and how, and also the Ruby Sunday part. The fact that she went to the time window, she's about to confront her mom or somebody who's trying to be her mom. I wonder if we're going to find out if she is indeed related to the trickster, because that's one theory that a lot of people have is that Ruby Sunday might be related to the trickster. So maybe we'll finally have that confirmation next week, considering she did make the sound effect, that sort of a sound during the Devil's Core that's very reminiscent to what we saw in the Sarah Jane Adventures about Trickster. So maybe the Trickster shows up, maybe, or are we going to have to wait till next year till we see it? I don't know. I have a secret suspicion we're getting closer to perhaps Trickster's involvement in Doctor Who finally happening, which I think will be very interesting. So yeah, I am very intrigued to see what happens now going into this episode. So yeah, let me know in the comment section what you guys think of the story and Legend of Ruby Sunday as we start preparing ourselves for part 2 next week, which I'm also very convinced we are also going to get our first look at the Joy to the World episode, which will be this year's Christmas special, said to be Moffat's farewell script in the Doctor Who universe, of course, in the Whoniverse. So I'll be very interested to see how Moffat's going to send off his Doctor Who writing during Christmas of 2024, which I think he's going to deliver. I think he's going to give us an episode, a perfect send-off for him is probably going to happen. We'll see what happens, because I think we're going to see a trailer next week for The Joy to the World. I'm very confident in that because of the way that, usually when we've come to an end of the series, they always have something ready regarding the upcoming special. And considering they've already filmed it, they finished filming the story earlier this year, I think they're ready enough to probably show some regarding Joy to the World, and I'll be very interested to see what that is. And maybe we'll get a confirmation to the Sea Devil spin-off, the War Between Land and Sea. Maybe we'll finally know when that's happening, because we still haven't had official confirmation yet from BBC about its existence yet. So maybe next week will be our first time finally knowing that it's happening. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all in the Whoniverse news this week, as well as my review for Empire of Death next Saturday. So get ready. Things are shaping up. See you then.